did. So we want to keep up the momentum. I'd like to keep up the interchange as well, and we're going to pick up on the points that Anne made about an hour ago, particularly the issue of opportunities for reducing CO2. You can see that this is about decarbonisation, disrupt, and you heard the question I put to Anand about the profound realignment that you're all going through at the moment. At the same time, as there is intense pressure and intense expectation on your industry because of climate change, not just climate change, but a climate emergency. So we need to somehow tease out of all of you how you're going to address this. And what we're going to do now is decarbonisation, disrupting cement and concrete. Let's listen to Ehab Shalaby, who's CEO of DCarbon Egypt. Then we're going to have Ahmad Heshmat, who's CEO of Alpha. Welcome, and then Amr is back. So we need to keep up the pace going through this to take us up to lunch. Ehab, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'd like first to thank Nick, Amr, Ian, and Emir on hosting this event. In fact, I'd like to start by two very important points. The first is your last question, which you addressed to your esteemed panelists here. I'm receiving this question from many investors nowadays. The question was saying, what is the implications of the war on the Ukraine on the transformation and the decarbonization in the cement sector, in different sectors? And in fact, many people think that due to the war on the Ukraine, the path towards decarbonization is expected to retreat. In fact, this is not the case. This is a fallacy I'd like to start by correcting. What is happening now is a new tactic, shifting from attacking the supply side of climate change sources to the demand side of climate change sources. And by this, I mean the construction and real estate industry as the major contributor to the demand side. This is a very strategic comment that should be taken into consideration. And this is also a challenge to the industry, which we would like to talk about later on in terms of opportunities. But in fact, this question is important to be addressed. And also, this answer or this context is important to have in mind, which will put more pressures on the industry itself. My second comment, I just came from Egypt. And in fact, in Egypt, a similar approach has been taken towards decarbonization of the industry. But we did it the other way around. We started by having all of the stakeholders on the table. So me and Amr was just being in the IFC round table. It's a very big project that is hosted by the IFC, and another one is now hosted by the EBRD in Egypt, where we are always talking about the full green built ecosystem. And here I'd like to praise the comment that has been raised by your esteemed self. We will never do it alone. We need cement, we need concrete, we need consultants, we need specifiers, we need frameworks, BRIAM, EDGE, and LEED, but we also need financial sector to contribute and to understand the transformation that is happening, along with other stakeholders such as the regulators. So it's a stakeholders game. It will never take one person to tango alone. This is another strategic comment I'd like to put into the context. Coming back to the panel. I think I have heard for 3 hours splat shots. And from my perspective, I'd like first to put everybody on one boat and let's debate from this boat on. And please stop me when you feel like I'm building the boat very slowly. First, we need to reconstruct the narrative, because what I can find is that the narrative itself lacks a lot of pieces that needs to be constructed. Capitalism has taught us for 50 or 60 years that this is how the game should be played. It's about GDP growth rates, and it's about profitability when it comes to the corporate level and shareholder value. And after 50 years of teaching us this, and after we established all our business models on, and we excelled, they came suddenly to say, oops, we were wrong. There are some environmental consequences, and there are some social consequences. This oops is coincidentally victimizing the cement sector The cement sector is not a criminal. The cement sector is coincidentally the victim of this issue, the victim of their mistake. And that's why, from my perspective, sustainability is a way that capitalism is trying to correct itself by itself. And in the way of the correction, there will be definitely some victims who will possess this. And let's talk by numbers from Egypt, which is my country. The built environment in all is the second major contribution to the GDP in Egypt. It is the first contributor to the GDP growth rates. It is the second contributor to employment. And it is the first contributor to foreign direct investments. These are all socio-economic variables that are needed to be taken into consideration. So this is where we should start from. Second, when we move this narrative to our region, Egypt contributes 325 million tons of CO2 emissions annually. How much is this in the global context? 0.6%. Anybody here knows the contribution of CO2 emission of United Arab Emirates? Anybody have the figure? UAE is contributing approximately 225 million tons of CO2 emissions. This constitutes also 0.6% of the global emissions. So our contribution in the global emission is still very low. The built environment as a whole contributes to approximately 20% of this figure in Egypt, and approximately to a similar figure in the UAE. Where is the real problem? The real problem is that population growth rates in our region is very high. Population growth rates in our region is very high. The other problem is that GDP growth rates that are aspired by nations are very high. And both of those factors contributes to pressures, together with urbanization pressure on the built environment as a whole, in order to, which will lead to increase in the emissions. So our problem is not in the stock of CO2 emissions. Our problem is more with the flow that is coming with the GHG emissions, along with our progress in GDP growth rates and population growth rates. This is another context that should be taken into account very quickly. A final point before I leave you the floor again in constructing the narrative. I think that I'd like first to thank all who is working on this, because in fact this is where it should come from. And I will narrate the words of Amr. Amr is not a person who is working in the business. Amr, when he speaks about cement, you can hear and echo his passion in what he's saying. When Amr came to me for the first time and we met, he told me one thing. Ehab, we are running alone, fast, in different directions. It's better for us to run together, even if slower, but in the right direction. These are four major strategic directions I'd like to capitalize on in our next discussion. Thank you.
But nothing you're saying is questioning the absolute urgency now to move towards decarbonisation.
Thank you again. From my perspective, the urgency comes from being an opportunity rather than a cost. The cement sector, and particularly in our region, can use the decarbonization movement and capitalize on the economic downturn in the north by providing the solution now at better costs and lower prices.
Do you think everyone in here understands that this is an opportunity, not a cost? Or is there a mindset problem?
This takes us to another problem. You are pressuring much on me. This is taking us to another problem, the problem of leadership that we were just talking about. Yes, but it's not a mindset problem. We cannot say that leadership is important and in an open bracket. Leadership has a lot of problems on the table, correct? And that's why I would like to copy you a sector that is more advanced than the cement sector, which is the financial sector. I have been working with 10 sectors in decarbonization, and I'd like to bring best practices. One of the major sectors, which is the financial sector, and one of the major CEOs told me a very strange comment that changed my mindset towards the issue. He told me, Ehab, I'm a leader in this sector, but I'm asking you a favor. I want you to take all these practices you have learned with us and imitate it in all of the sector. They told him, why you are selling your know-how for cheap? Yoli, it makes sense to win a race alone. I need everybody to start moving beside. And that's why, in the leadership mindset, yes, we want to be a front runner, but one step, and here is the political navigation part of the issue. One step ahead of the game is enough, because 2 steps means more costs that cannot be borne.
Thank you. Okay, well, let's pause at that point. Ahmad, from your perspective as CEO of Alpha.
I mean, a lot of very valuable information has been passed so far. And
are you surprised by any of it?
No, actually, no. Actually, I'm not surprised. It's always building up in common sense, actually. But I take the point of Arnold when he said that we are really facing a major pressure on demand. And this is a point that we have to take in consideration, because we need to look at the threats, the business and economical threats coming towards the industry. A lower demand means all what it means in terms of economical pressure on the profitability of the cement plants. And we are already, it would mean lower prices, lower utilization, and then we are already also faced not only by pressurized demand, but also inflating costs. So, I mean, the challenges are all of a sudden becoming too huge, and we are now asked also to behave better, and we should, on our CO2 emissions. And as Emil said, we haven't been behaving early enough and prompt enough, and it's now a must. Sometimes things are done better under pressure and under no other option available. And I think we will deliver, because we have been, and many cement operators have been delivering in terms of reducing carbon dioxide in an indirect way. It wasn't the agenda, it wasn't the objective. The objective, and I was one of them, is to reduce costs. As a side product, we reduced CO2, and we're not counting that. What I'm trying to say is that the know-how is available, as we all said in the morning, and the technology is available. And as Amr mentioned, the important is to start with the basics, what we already know and missing, which is the operational excellence. This, as Amr and other colleagues have said, will take us easily to the first 30%. I wouldn't say necessarily at no cost. Why at no cost? But part of it comes at no cost. Part of it comes under the regular CapEx envelopes that we all have allocated in our plants. At the end of the day, it will lead to cost reduction, and that's exactly the point that I wanted to land at. With the pressure and the increasing costs, we need to find ways of cost reduction. So operational excellence, as we all know, reduces costs significantly. You know, heat consumption control, energy consumption, electricity consumption control, all the other kind of optimizations in raw materials is definitely a cost reduction. So this is what we need as an important step one. To do so, and Ehab mentioned it, and both Amr and Ehab met and spoke about it, and Anna said it loud and clear, we should know that we shouldn't be working alone. One of the problems we always had is that we don't reach out to our partners. So cement industry is big enough, we know everything, and the others don't know about our industry, and we don't know about their industry. It's not a matter of industry anymore. I have said it's the built environment that we are jointly responsible for today. So, and we won't achieve more than 10% of our goals if everybody works in a silo. So the cement producers, the architects, the designers, the civil engineer designers, the specifiers have to go together. Cement is the only enabler for the transformation of the built environment into green, because it's the integral element in this value chain. Construction, on the other hand, sits on the demand side, so it's the pull force. So this coordination to align the expectation of the demand side with what can be offered under the objective of controlling CO2 is vital. And then eventually, and last point, again talking about the pressure, the economical pressure on the industry, reducing cost and aligning with the value chain of the industry also puts us in a better position vis-à-vis a competition of replacement. Because, I mean, as we become less economical, definitely the threat increases, and the threat has always been standing at the door. And with the CO2 pressure, competitors or substitutors will definitely try to find their way, and that's their right, into the built environment and to the construction industry. And that's what we need jointly to do together.
Thank you. In this session up until just after 1 o'clock, I'd like to involve you. Could you bring the microphone forward, please? Because I want to ask Anne whether we're beginning to address what you put on the agenda an hour ago. But Ahmed, do you believe that there is sufficient understanding of the implications and the urgency of what's coming down the track? I mean, I put that dilemma to Anand at the end of his session. You know, in the end, it's bad enough on the economic side, but there's also the climate pressure as well. And he said, I'm glad I'm not the CEO of a cement company.
No, I think there is not enough awareness still, and we don't feel the
pressure. Is there resistance?
Yes,
for sure. Is there denial?
Good point. It is a resistance. It's typically the comfort zone. So we master what we do, and we believe this is the business model where we manage to develop what we have developed, whether as business or as individuals. And it's the threat of the unknown. I mean, it's typical human nature that what you don't know, you fear. So what are you talking about? CO2, low clinker factor, alternative fuels. It's a disruption. And we are talking here about CO2 emissions being a disruption. There are other people on the field think of changing the business model as a disruption in order to serve controlling the CO2 emissions. I was one of them. I mean, when I first time heard, slag, what is slag? Why do I need to start educating myself again, And hence, and the plant again, all the planning that we have or the know-how that we have is not based on that, And then alternative fuels. Oh my God, you don't know what this has of an impact on the process, on the availability and the reliability. It's all true if you don't learn it, but it's simple. We've done it, and we go back here definitely to the leadership and the vision of the leadership.
Ehab, do you agree that there isn't a full understanding of the implications here?
I doubt it. Why? There is a very important player who is playing with all industries on the process of decarbonization who is not working with the cement sector. It's the financial sector. And why it is not playing? And this is a very recent conclusion I got because, as Amr said, 40% is a low-cost, no-cost solution for decarbonization. It's low-hanging fruits. For the financial sector, does not find himself triggered to accelerate. If I have a very quick recommendation here to do with for bringing the financial sector on, it will be moving from facility and product-oriented banks to partnership banks, meaning the bank who will partner with me on the short term in the low cost, no cost, will partner with me on the medium and long term, higher cost investments.
All right, well, let me ask, is there anyone from the financial sector who'd like to come in and explain what you need to understand, what you need to appreciate to accelerate this, to help the cement industry? I leave that invitation open. And pick up on what you've just been hearing. Have we gone far enough, given the question you posed about an hour ago?
I think we were coming to, because I was in Egypt not long ago, and I would say even there are a third level of stakeholders, because you have the cement industry that always discuss with the authorities, and I was really pleased to see that the authorities are coming to us with the CO2, even coming up with the topics. Okay, when do we have a CO2 tax in Egypt? Wow, great. But they say, but you will have to convince the level above, which means at the prime minister. And that's another level that we have to break, which means that we need to align the whole supply chain with all the discussion, like you said, everybody, even with the financial on board, and then bringing a one sentence or one action plans along everybody to the prime minister, and that it can then be imposed at all, because here we are talking about different authorities. We're talking about the standards of cement, we are talking about the concrete codes, we are talking about building codes and all the actors around. And even you have universities that are in building committees.
Yeah.
So you have to act the whole way, and we need to align everybody there in order to bring a one action plan at a high
Be
level.
practical. Do you believe prime ministers want to get involved in this?
They have to.
They have to is not the same as will they?
Because as they said, population is increasing. We need, especially in Egypt, residential infrastructure. And if we don't have a green building, because green building is always about, there are two different emissions in building. You have the embedded emissions, which is the construction, and you have the operational emissions, which is AC, heating, etc. But the embedded CO2, which is all the building materials, have never been really addressed in the building discussion. It was always separate.
All right.
Cement industry and the building discussion was always separate, and it's time now to bring them both together.
That's a big challenge. I'll come to you in a moment if I may. Amma, just pick up on that 50, 30, 20 ratio, which Anne has just mentioned. And can we get the microphone here as well, please?
Yeah.
Amma.
I'm lucky I'm at the end, so I will summarize and conclude all what I've heard, and I will start backward from Anne's comments. So, first of all, as you said in your earlier comment, the prime ministers are under pressure from the UN. So the pressure on the government is there. They will have to align, whether they want to align or they must align. So this one link is solved. As Ehab said, and I'm going backward in the discussion, in the IFC meeting and the EBRD meeting that you had, the chains are coming together in Egypt. It's the same in UK.
Yeah.
It's coming together. It's the same in other countries. And this concept of the value chain is growing and growing. And why is it? I'll go back to Anne's comment on the embodied and the operational part of the building. The green belt in total represents 50% of the GHG globally. 30% of that lies in the operation of the building, and 20% of it lies in, this is the 50-30-20. The 20% lies in the embodied carbon. So we as cement producers, we look at mainly the embodied carbon, but we have an impact on the operational part in the way we do cement in isolation, in the way we produce materials that can aerate in hot weather, in the way that we can do materials that can grab carbon. So we are, as said by Mr. Heshmat, we are integral to the whole value chain of green belt, and it cannot be done unless it's being done in synergy between all the players with cement in the heart of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, Nick, I'm just trying to be a little more optimistic than all these speculative questions which we are having and the roadblocks which seem to be...
Are you saying we're being pessimistic? We're trying, I said at the beginning, let's be realistic. We're trying to be realistic.
These guys have reached for 80, how can they be pessimistic?
Right, so essentially, picking up on what Ehab said, that we need the financial community with their prowess and their sharp insights or whatever they find as investment savvy to drive this. Now, probably that is not happening to get us to green, but it's happening in another way. You would see a lot of startups now who have started dabbling in cement with the tagline, with the starting sentence that these guys contribute 7 to 8% of the CO2, which was never in the past. I've been talking to startups realistically, I mean, the last, even through the COVID times, startups in California, in Washington, in London, in many parts of the world, these are youngsters who are trying to come out with solutions which are addressing this issue of how to get the CO2 down to net zero in cement production. Yes, there are some of them who are very naive, They don't really understand the big thing which we do. As Ahmad said, we think that we are too big and we are all inclusive. We don't need to talk and chat with other people. So sometimes we think, well, these guys are youngsters, they don't know much about it, but that is how innovation comes about. So there are, I'm in talks with like 5 or 10 of them at this current moment around the world who are trying to tell us, this is how we do cement. This is how we do cement. Can we do it this way? This is going to reduce your footprint.
So you're saying we need new thinking?
Yeah, and these guys are being backed by large VCs. So they are not on their own. So that is how the financial community is coming in.
Anyone here from the financial community who wants to jump in, saying you're being very fair to us? You're being very unfair to us.
Let me finish, sorry, Nick. The other part, before I forget, about the government getting involved, which Anne was saying, and you are saying as an example, or should they get involved, or is it easy
Do
for
they
them
want to get involved?
Yeah, do they want to get involved? A good example is now we have a new cement called LC3 cement, you know? And it was basically in an unwritten form pushed by the Swiss government because it was a research coming out of a Swiss institute. This LC3 cement has been, and so you basically can reduce your clinker by 50%. It has been introduced into India, and I knew that India building codes of practice are archaic British building codes of practice, and they don't want to change, although the British have adopted the new UN code. The Bureau of Indian Standards has readily accepted the LC3 cement, and the new standards are going to come about in the next 3 months. This is again more a G2G push, aligned to what she's been saying. If it doesn't happen at that level, it's very difficult to get new things. I mean, if you say I can produce clinker-free cement, nobody on this planet is going to accept that cement. It can be carbon negative, but the industry is not going to accept it.
Agree.
All right, thank you. I'm pushing because time is short, but both of you come in on that, particularly what Anne has introduced about the important role of governments in all of this.
Okay.
That it's easy to say let's get more regulation and so on, but there is a very strong view, not just in the cement industry or this sector, that actually only governments and regulation can actually force the changes, including in the finance sector, I have to say. So both of you, what is your view about who else needs to be involved? Finance and particularly governments, and what we just heard there from LC3 in India.
Yeah, it's complicated, and I hope that everyone can catch it. What's happening in Egypt, right? I will first answering your question, bringing the government through designing a CO2 tax, a carbon tax. We have done a very big study for the Egyptian government on a comparative study on the impact of carbon taxes and carbon markets. And there was a very big problem with carbon taxes. The Egyptian market, by nature, is a sort of oligopolistic market. It's not a free market. This means that demand is inelastic. And with inelastic demand, any increase in tax means shifting the whole burden to consumer side of the story. So if I did a CO2 emission tax on his factory, he will transfer the whole tax to the consumer, and therefore we will face a problem, a socio-economic problem, which is designed in the first place housing for socio-economic solution. But this is a very quick answer. Carbon market proved to be very good solution, and currently the Council of Ministers in Egypt, in cooperation with the Financial Regulatory Authority and the Egyptian Stock Exchange, is launching in COP27 the first of its kind carbon market in Egypt. This is number one. Number two, something I don't know why it's not communicated across the room during the past 2 sessions. You have a global carbon market in Dubai, and we have registered 10 projects from Egypt in this global carbon market here. That this is something you should cooperate with, bring him on board, because this is an opportunity for the sector. This is two very quick answers. A very quick answer here. In fact, the financial sector is intervening, as you mentioned. But there are other 2 ways he is intervening with, which are very smart. The first thing, it is intervening through the developers themselves. The biggest of its kind sustainability-linked loan has been given to Majid Al Futtaim, 1.5 billion UAE, in order to construct LEED buildings. And this will put pressures on the full value chain. He will, to have the score of the LEED, he needs to find cement, iron, steel, and every component that feeds the LEED scoring. But this is one solution. Another solution that is, from my perspective, more brilliant, stemmed from Amr outcome. 50%, approximately, the study said 50% of the CO2 emissions is from the operation, and 50% is from the embedded carbon. So the IFC, the International Financial Corporation, developed a framework called EDGE. And this EDGE framework is more focused on the operation rather than being focused on the on the built material. It is focusing also on the built material, but it's always focusing on the operation. What is very beautiful about this framework is that it's a framework that has been designed from a financial background perspective. But this is as if it's a complete solution that exists with us. And this is something I didn't see much in UAE, or maybe it's due to my lack of knowledge, but I would like to bring it on. A final issue, and I will cut it here. And this is the complicated issue. Please, part of our partners in the company has been negotiators on the table of the UNFCCC for the Egyptian government for more than 15 years. Something very weird is happening. The negotiation track, the political track, does not represent what is happening on ground in reality by any means.
Why is that?
Because something like the 100 billion that has been fought on the table has been already disseminated to the market through green bonds and green financial tools by international financial organizations at all times, put to increase the issue. Egypt NDC, Egypt formulated in the last couple of months its national determined contribution. And it identified 3 sectors that it will target in order to reduce carbon emissions. Okay. But it did it in a form of a conditional NDC. We are going to reduce this, and that, but on having 250 billion US dollar. But it didn't specify how it will get them. So they can be driven through
That's
G2G,
okay.
or they could be driven through the financial sector.
Thank you. Ahmad, come in, your final thought on this. We've got 4 more interventions before lunchtime, so this is building different layers of the discussion. What's your contribution on this particular thing about the role of governments and whether it's right or wrong to expect governments and regulation to play a massive part in this?
The governments definitely are having a vital role to play, definitely. I mean, as we said, sometimes we need to be pushed to work, and this is the pushing side. First, the commitment of the government that the urgency reaches the government level. So as we said, as we stay in our comfort zones, also the government stay in their comfort zones, and they do not get the sense of urgency unless it's burning. And it is important that our government feels it, and it's happening as we are even here in the Middle East now receiving the COP. And that means is we are exposing ourselves and admitting and coming up with the commitments which definitely all the players in the value chain need. So do we need the government? Yes. Are they going to move proactively in the coming period of time? I believe very much yes. But they also are part of another global value chain or chain. They need financing. Many countries would need subsidies or financing or that big fund we are talking about that can enable them or give them the leverage to extend those subsidies or carbon tax subsidies to the industries. So yes, it is coming. But what we also need to be aware of, if I may add, back to Ehab and to everybody, is the economics of the industry. Because here we are talking about the sustainability of the planet. We have also to think of the sustainability of the industry. So we need to continue, or we need to focus on the attractiveness of the industry to the financial, to the lenders, to the financial sectors, and to the investors. And again, that drives us to do the homework on our commitment to CO2, and that we really deliver. And as we said, everybody here knows how to do the first 30% at almost no cost. It's just a matter of the comfort zone. But what we need to know that soon, and some of the countries have reached it already, the valuation for the companies, for the cement companies, have now a 20% delta between those who have acted and have a plan to act and those who don't. So the valuation just based on action plan or achievements already done on CO2 is already 20%. IFC, for example, is putting a 35% target of green finance that we want to work out to be eligible to receive it. They've already given 7 billion in last year on 130 projects, and we want to be part of it. On the other hand, also we want to avoid being non-competitive when we are exporting for Europe, for example, because now you have a border balanced, or whatever the term is, of 70 euro that is going to be coming in force soon. So if you are not complying with the CO2 emission criteria, you will face a border equalizing tax of 70 euro, which makes exports not possible.
Thanks, Ahmad. We're doing a rolling session here, so can I ask you, first of all thank you. You can contribute from the floor, but I need to do a rotation, please, to invite Raphael and Roland up here. Thank you very much indeed, but we haven't finished this discussion yet. Thank you.
Thank you.